Okay, let's get started then. Let's kick off today's webinar. So today we're going to be covering integrating social media with Adobe's Marketo Engage. Looking at the registration list for today, most of you who are joining us have a Marketo instance, maybe not, which will be an interesting escapade for you guys, understanding what Marketo capabilities are. I saw some HubSpot friends in there as well. And as we talk a bit more about social media integration and data points, of course, is a broad topic which we can cover for multiple platforms as well. Today, joining us, we've got Colin Day on the call, who's the EMEA Managing Director for Oktopost, who we'll talk about in a little bit more detail. I'm James Fletcher, the CEO and a senior consultant here at JTF Marketing. We're going to cover a little bit around social media management platforms. We're going to talk more about how we can use the social data. We're going to talk about attribution of success of social. I think something we're all very keen to understand, and how can we make that work and what is the right structures. And then we'll get into, how do we get this integrated? How do we use this data? What does it look like? And importantly, we'll have lots of time for Q&A. I think this is a topic where I had a few people email me ahead of this call, just asking some questions, which I'll be more than happy to cover off later. I'm not going to teach you all how to use Zoom. I think you're already aware of that. So Q&A or chat, whatever you prefer. Feel free to drop in any questions, even if you think of them now, feel free to drop them in and we can pick up from there. So with no further ado, I'm going to pass over to Colin just to give us a very quick introduction to himself and Oktopost.
Thanks, James. Just to do a sound check, you can hear us, right? Perfect, excellent. And James, I think we're always all learning something about Zoom, so carry on teaching us, my friend. But everyone, I'm Colin Day. I'm the Managing Director of Oktopost Business across Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Asia Pacific. Oktopost is a social media management and employee advocacy platform, and I guess over the course of the next 20 or so minutes, we'll get into the meat of what that really means. But at the high level, yeah, we support B2B organizations to publish content out over their own corporate social channels, be that the likes of LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. We also empower them to get that amplified by their employees, and empowering their employees to share that out over their own personal networks, the likes of LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Zing, and WeChat. And then the difference with Oktopost, as we'll see, is all of that is really a commodity, like publishing content over social. Lots of different platforms that can do that. Oktopost is not unique in that way, but where we are unique is when someone starts to engage with that social content, we start to capture the details about the what and the who. Yeah, and once we've got the who, that's where the magic really begins, right? Because then we can put it into the likes of HubSpot, yeah, into the likes of, yes, Eloqua does exist, Pardot, or indeed Marketo, yeah, and empower you to use it for, I don't know, use it to lead score, or use it for segmentation purposes, or use it for attribution modeling, something that I know James will touch on over the course of the next 20 minutes, or indeed take someone from one nurture program and drop them into another nurture program based upon the marketing assets that they're engaging with or the conversations they're having with you on social. That's really the power of the Oktopost platform. We talk about turning people from being just general marketers to revenue focused marketers, right? And that's really where the Oktopost platform fits in.
Brilliant, and thanks for that. Yeah, and I think some of those topics you've touched on, we've all either been on that journey of trying to find tech that integrates nicely, that plays nicely together, which makes our lives easier, right? This journey for most of us started with a goal of automated marketing, whatever that was, way back when, and now we're starting to
I was no different, James.
Yeah, and now we're talking about the results, right? We're talking about how do we get it to work? We've got all this cool tech, now how do we get it to stick together? And those native integrations are right. And
yeah,
Colin, as you say, you and I probably go back quite far in the Marketo world, going back to your earlier days. So maybe you can give us some color to that as well.
Yeah, sure. So, James, I actually purchased Oktopost, so I sit where where our audience sit today, right? It's like I've purchased Oktopost twice over the last 6 years. I used to be the chief technology officer for corporate marketing and head of the global demand center. And head of marketing operations for a large financial technology company called FIS. And before that, SunGard, before we sold the SunGard business to FIS in December of 2015. I purchased, or we purchased, it wasn't my check, thank goodness, but we purchased the Marketo platform and rolled it out across the SunGard enterprise pre that sale to FIS, and then took Marketo into the FIS organization as well. As part of that rollout, it's like we were really retooling our marketing function, right? It's like probably many people here, it's like we'd underinvested in the technology back then that supported our marketing activities. We'd done a lot of investment from sales. We were going through a bit of a sales transformation journey, and that then spawned into or led into some changes inside our marketing automation, that our marketing department, that led us to look to automate in order to affect stuff at scale, and that's where Marketo came into it. When we looked at Marketo, great for email marketing, right? Great to be able to tell, to push email content out there, to be able to tell who's engaging with that content, who's taken the call to action. Great, being able to get insight around, who's visiting the website and taking someone on that journey from unknown to known on the web properties. Great for integrating with event technology such as Cvent and various others out there. But the one thing that it was missing, was social. And it's not surprising, right, James? Because if we go back, to when Marketo was created, social wasn't a big thing, right? For B2B organizations and B2B brands. It was for B2C, but not for B2B. And the Oktopost platform is actually the only B2B social media management and employee advocacy platform that has been certified by Adobe for the Marketo Engage program. And the reason behind that is because of the turnkey integrations that we have, the data that we collect, and the seamless way that data flows from Oktopost into the Marketo environment. But the reason I purchased Oktopost all those years ago, was because of that integration. And guess what? We're still the only platform that can do it today, which is why I joined the company in March of 2020.
And that's really interesting. Actually, I guess this is where I can skip us on to the next couple of slides as well, because I'm conscious there's some questions coming in as well. So, I mean, JTF Marketing, we specialize in marketing automation technology, right? Martech, how do we get this technology working? And I came across Oktopost a few years ago at a conference in London and thought, wait, this is really cool. This is really connecting the dots between social. And then the previous life, I did run a social media agency. I don't advise it. It's a very hard business, very hard to prove. And now if I sit and look back with the tech we have today, actually, it would have been really easy to prove then, because we'd have seen engagement, we'd have seen, attribution to leads, et cetera, et cetera. So, we've set ourselves up to help our customers, some of who are attending today, to use technology in the right way, help them work through the different use cases and challenges they have, whether it's using the technology in the right way, getting an attribution model they can believe in, where the data is accurate, where it's correct, and importantly, getting all this tech integrated together so that we can make use of it. And we are an Oktopost partner. We use Oktopost ourselves, and you'll see on our social profiles, there'll be a nice little tag posted through Oktopost, and we use both sides of the platform. And again, I think we'll come to a bit more around technology and what are the differences, and get to the nuts of this. How do we actually use the data? What does it look like? How do I then start activating some of these ideas? So this call is very much about the art of the possible, of what we can do with social data in the world of marketing automation, in the world of business development, and how do we turn that into customers? I think that's a really important conversation here. So I'm going to go full disclosure. This is no G2 reviews or full-on comparison or Gartner chart, but it is kind of top level These are the different B2B social media management platforms, some of which are probably more on the B2C side actually than they are on B2B. And one of the things that I really wanted to draw to everybody's attention on this call is when we start talking about integration to Marketo and getting data right, the hardest part is sometimes the integration. Why? Because in a lot of platforms, you don't actually have a native integration, which allows you just to plug it in, switch it on, and then start using it. And I wanted to pick up on that point a little bit with you, Colin, because obviously you guys at Oktopost have created a native integration with Marketo Engage and our other platforms, of course, which we saw on the earlier slide. I mean, can you give us some context into why you guys are strong in that area and the others in this market are probably not even thinking this way?
Yeah, that's a great question, right, James? I mean, let me actually do a Quentin Tarantino on you and start at the end and go to the beginning, right? How long does it take to turn the integrations on, right? It's like I think that's a really important part. You see me drink from a cup of tea, yeah. I love a good cup of tea. It takes about what, 3 minutes to boil a kettle, 2 minutes to boil a kettle. Yeah, that's how long it takes to turn on the Oktopost Marketo integrations. It really is that simple, right? With inside the Oktopost platform, you give the Munchkin IDs, like your secret password, your client ID, etc. Those 3 elements, push save, and Oktopost goes off and does the rest of it for you. What's it doing? Yeah, it's creating obviously that join and that connection between the 2 platforms, but it's also creating a set of custom activities within inside the Oktopost, within inside the Marketo environment, right? And it's those activities that we write the data to, and they sit within inside the activity log, native within inside the Oktopost platform, within inside the Marketo platform, and therefore it's like all of that richness of data is there to be used within inside smart lists, in order to be able to affect any of the Marketo activities such as lead scoring, like nurture stream, so on and so forth. Why has Oktopost been able to get there and no one else? It's because we started with we've been around since 2013, and we started back then with the mindset that we were going to build from the ground up, a B2B solution. Right, it's like if we looked at Daniel Kushner and Liad Guz, who are our 2 co-founders, Daniel's the CEO, Liad's head of product. When those guys sat down and really started to map out the journey for Oktopost, the reason for Oktopost, and what it was they were building, both of them come from a B2B background. And it was because they saw a gap in the market, because they saw that the marketing automation platforms around at the time didn't have any focus on social. There was that gap. Yeah, that was why they said, like, let's start with B2B. Sure, we have a few B2C clients. Yeah, we're actually probably 98% B2B, 2% B2C. If you look at some of these others here, it's like Sprout, Falcon, Hootsuite, very much came at it from the B2C end of the spectrum and are trying to get into the B2B world. Sprinkler, large enterprise, like really don't come down to mid-market. Oktopost goes SMB, mid-market up to enterprise. We cover the whole spectrum.
Yeah, that's really insightful because, again, I take our experience of being the technical integrators often of these products and being thrown the likes of, Hootsuite, which is almost in my memory, and say, yeah, we've got an integration. And then you start looking at it and you go, wait, hang on, this doesn't work. It doesn't scale for complex Marketo infrastructures either. And I think this is, this comes up time and time again. We talk about CRM projects. We talk about how CRM doesn't match Marketo. And I know Colin, you and I have had conversations about this.
You're not going to bring up the word dynamics, are you?
I'm not going to.
You told me that you were never going to talk about dynamics and Marketo integrations ever again, James.
Well, they are one of my favorites, of course. And again, it's just, I think this is what it comes back to, right? If the integrations are complicated, it makes it difficult to get the data through. And one of the things that I loved about Oktopost was its native capability to integrate, its ability to pass the custom data into Marketo. And from an integrator perspective, it's a breeze, right? It's a couple of clicks and I'm done. I've done my consulting job. I can move on to the fun stuff. And I think that's the critical part here when we start looking at some of the challenges around social. And social for me, if I take it back to my days of running the social agency, it was super exciting at the time. It was brand new. Everybody wanted to do it. Everybody was spending cash trying to get it to work and understand. We're now quite a few years on from that. And now we've settled down. We've got social. We understand social. We know then which channels we need to be choosing depending on our business type or our industry. We've even got some regulations now around social and what can and can't be posted from a company perspective even. And I think this is really interesting. I mean, Colin, you probably have more conversations again about social than I do with people. I mean, what do you see as the biggest challenge with social right now, 2021? What is the big challenge?
Yeah, so look, if we think about what's happened over the last 18 months, right, James? Like, socials started to climb up, the ladder from a visibility perspective, right? It's like we're starting to see in-person events start to happen again. I don't know about you, but I've been to a couple over the last couple of weeks. Not as big as they used to be, right? It's like a lot smaller and a lot more compact for various reasons. But over the last 18 months, that just wasn't there, right? So I run a sales organization, right? And from a sales perspective, my sellers had to go and find new ways of meeting people and engaging with people and having conversations with people. And guess what? We got this thing called social, right? It's like and people are willing to have conversations with individuals more so than they are with brands, which is why advocacy is a great tool to help amplify the reach. Right. So, if we think about the question of what are some of the challenges, if we think about it on the advocacy side of things, sometimes employees just don't know what to say. Right. It's like they don't know how to start the conversation. So that's where having a defined advocacy program, something that the marketing team can create content and copy around, and easily get that into the hands of their colleagues and the company's employees to give them a baseline, right, to start the conversation. I think that takes away one of those pain points, right? One of the pain points of what do I say, when do I say it, right? So that's certainly one of the things, right? Another thing that I would say as being some of the challenges is you mentioned the art of the possible. Yeah, when I was a marketer, I didn't know it was possible to get insight into who is engaging with my content. I always thought about it I'd class it as more brand or vanity metrics, right? It's like what post is being engaged with and how much engagement, not the who, right? So understanding that it is possible to get that information and to bring it back and enrich the leads and contacts that I have inside my marketing programs and my sales activity, and to understand when someone is engaging is uber important these days and ultra possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I keep going back to the same topic, and it's probably because it's top of mind for a lot of the customers that we're working with at the moment. It's almost proving the value, right? Is it really worth the investment? Are we really getting the result out that we're expecting? And what are we expecting? Should we expect anything? And I think that's something, again, when we talk about using this data, it starts to get really interesting in terms of how do we tie this all together? So kind of fuel some ideas and some use cases here. There's many ways in which you can start to use data once you've got it in Marketo. We all know that. We've got activity logs, we've got lead scoring, we can collect data, we can generate net new names. And when you start thinking about content, and I'm a massive fan of proposition scoring rather than lead scoring, because I think you should know whether the person's right to buy your products or not. And the bit that you're trying to work out is, what do you want to buy from me? When do you want to buy from me? What does it look like? And through your content marketing model, you should more or less have an idea of that, of what are they engaging with? Are they ready to engage with you or buy from you? How do I then know when to approach? And I think that then steers you down that path of, okay, once I'm starting to see people, engage with me talking about, electric vehicles, for example, I'll take you down the route of a lead nurture specific for electric vehicles if I'm trying to sell you a new car. Or if, even if I'm starting to think about the content that I create and I distribute and I get conversions, where are they coming from? Because we all use UTMs. We are all punching out links in every channel with the exact same UTM, with content, whatever else, and email, and it will only go so far. So again, how do you get some of that intelligence? And I think as we've started to touch on as well, advocacy, employee campaigns are super, super critical. And again, I'm going to pedal us back kind of 10 years ago. It was bloody impossible. It was really painful, actually, to be able to get communications out. And almost marketers wanted control of the individual profiles, which, of course, from a security and personal information perspective, was alien. It was just surreal. But that's what we did in that time. We took control of people's profiles and almost were editorial people for those profiles, publishing content. And that when we start thinking about social selling and engagement, of course, it's a completely different world to what that was before. And I think now, as you mentioned, Colin, in the pandemic times, I think a lot of us took online to communicate, to say how we felt. And of course, that is going to stick. We see lots of events come online, lots of even social live video campaigns, which obviously took a massive boost based on the global crisis. And again, we've all got very familiar with online tools, even those of us who previously weren't maybe so data orientated or so online focused are now quite focused on those things online. And I guess this is where, when we start thinking about the art of the possible of what could it look like, there's some really interesting case studies surrounding Oktopost and the use of the data. Again, we can talk about, capturing net new leads, attributing them in the right way. Of course, getting the lead score changing as they're starting to engage, to prioritize for sales and business development follow-up. And all of that, it has to be contextualized into your business model, of course. But there is obviously scale to identify your true champions as well, right? So we can use advocacy programs to then identify who is promoting our content in the market, who are our champions, and how do we do more with them. Maybe that's how you were identified, Colin.
And say, why do you do that as well, James, right? The reason you do it, is when was the last time you spoke to a brand on social? Maybe it was British Airways to moan about a flight back to the UK or something, right? But no, I mean, it's like, in all seriousness, right? It's like, brand awareness, sure, but to actually engage, very few people engage. And actually, statistically, you're 10 times more likely to engage with an employee of a brand than you are with the brand itself. And off the back of that, you're 6 times more likely to convert, take that conversion journey, from that peer-to-peer conversation than you are from a conversation with a brand.
Which is really interesting when we start thinking about net new name capture from social media, right? That's again the big question: do we actually generate a return? Are we capturing net new names? How do we get people, to drop their business email address, for example, and what does that look like? And again, there's some of the challenges, I think. When we start talking about the social attribution, for me, this is something quite important. And when I start thinking about return on investment, I mean, we started life ourselves on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and then we went, we can't keep investing in all these platforms. Where are we actually getting the return? And for us, actually, Oktopost allowed us to see LinkedIn is our main channel. It's B2B. We're talking to people who are professionals. They want materials that support them and help them get stuff done. And even this webinar, we promoted through the advocacy program in Oktopost in order to get more people joining this webinar, either live or on demand, of course, because we keep the asset moving. We keep it live after some time. And again, we've talked a little bit about, UTMs and why they don't cut it. I mean, I want to just reflect on one point here, actually, which is, and it's a question that's come up, actually, how do we connect these systems together? So my social profile might have nothing to do with my business email address. So how do we connect those, Colin, in Oktopost when we start talking about using this data, right? Because you might have James Fletcher over here and James T. Fletcher over here because they go by two different names. How am I joining the dots for that?
Yeah, and that's a great question. So inside the Oktopost platform, there's an area of the system called the people database, right? And that no prizes for guessing what's stored in there, right? It's like the details about it's like the people that are engaging with that content, right? And as James said, maybe he's got one name on Twitter, another one on Facebook, and something totally different on LinkedIn, right? The magic of Oktopost is the AI that we have that manages that people database. Yeah, and what it's looking to do is to bring those social profiles together for one individual, right? So that we get one record, that covers James's LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, etc. In that single entity, and that's once we've got that inside the Oktopost platform, if that record exists inside the Marketo environment, our matching AI that looks to bring those two systems together has a 95% likelihood that it will be able to affect a match. And once it matches it, then all of that social engagement data flows through to Oktopost. But in answer to Frank's question, Oktopost also helps you serve up or identify net new leads or prospective net new leads, right? So people that have been engaging with your social content that isn't, or that aren't in your Marketo environment. And when that happens, we serve that up to the marketer. The marketer does some primary, maybe secondary research. They assess or ascertain whether this is a good fit or not. And if it is, then they manually push that record over to Marketo using a form submission process that we set up. Brilliant.
Yeah, and I realize actually we're getting close to our time, but we're having a great time here talking about social and integrating it with Marketo. So I'm going to push on. This case study is something you've shared with us, Colin, and it will come out in the slides later on when we share those after the call. Maybe you can just give us a quick 1 minute on the success that ACI have seen.
Yeah, so ACI Worldwide, large financial technology company that some people may or may not have heard of. Marketo users, Oktopost users, been an Oktopost user for a number of years. The gentleman speaking that if you're able to lip read is telling you what an amazing journey they've been on. That's Chris Tane, who's head of social over at ACI. They really joined us because of the advocacy elements of the Oktopost platform, right? They had a publishing requirement. They wanted to put stuff out over the ACI channel, but they actually really wanted to extend their reach, right, and their audience, and they wanted to empower their global network of employees to do that. Some of the impressive statistics that Chris shared with me recently and shared in this video, you can see on the screen through advocacy and through the use of Oktopost and connecting it with Marketo. They've been able to increase their audience reach by 35%. Their website traffic increased by 130% from their social media activities, and this actually led to 40% more leads, directly converting from the content that their employees shared.
Oh, it's pretty impressive. I'm sure we'd all be very keen on results like that, right?
And then we can pull many more examples like that out, James. If people go to oktopost.com, they'll see a number of case studies from different industries: technology, manufacturing, financial services, so on and so forth.
Brilliant. And so I guess before we get into the Q&A, there's a couple of comments to make here. I mean, why are we doing this? JTF Marketing, we provide this consultancy service. Of course, Oktopost, Colin's team provide the wonderful software that then makes life a bit easier for everybody. And we can tie this up. We can get those case studies together in terms of what are we going to go and use this technology for? How are we going to show value from it? And how will it change the way we're working now, and how do we show the value of social media and its investment. And again, I think that attribution piece, that advocacy piece, is super critical moving into into a new year even, and thinking about how do we maximize those profiles, those connections of the people we're working with. And Colin's kindly shared a guide here which you can download in our resources section, so jtfmarketing.co/resources, which goes into some of the specifics about what does lead scoring look like from through Oktopost. How do we get some of the other data, and how do we activate that? There's some amazing stats in there as well about how to get it right. And of course, do come and talk to us and engage with us if you want a demo of the platform. And of course, any questions around how does it integrate, what does it look like? So time for some questions, and appreciate we're running over time. So if you do have to drop, we'll leave these questions on the recording so that you can catch up with them later on. And I think let's get stuck straight in. I think there's a great question here on everybody's favorite topic, which is if Oktopost adds new leads, how does it manage consent, i.e. GDPR, the favorite topic? So Colin, how does Oktopost handle that?
Yeah, so look, consent or the legal basis, right, for managing data. It's like it changes on a company by company basis, right? Getting two in-house lawyers to even agree on what that is sometimes a challenge where I've come from. But if we think about what's actually happening, right, James? So two things, right? One is I could already have someone inside my Marketo environment that I'm running a sales marketing strategy against, right? And maybe that's done on the legal basis of legitimate business interest. Maybe it's done on consent, double opt-in, whatever the strategy is. But I've got a record inside Marketo, right? That person has chosen, opted to have a conversation with me, through social. Right, I've put it out onto maybe the LinkedIn network, but it's that individual that has consumed or engaged there, right? So all we're doing is flowing that engagement data back into their existing record inside Marketo, right? That's one thing, right? But it could be a net new lead, right? It's like remember I said that we also identify if someone doesn't exist inside Marketo. If you think about what's happened, they've chosen to engage with that content. You've put it out on a public forum. They've chose to engage with it. So I'm not legally trained. But in a lot of the organizations I've worked for and where I've come from, we would process that data or manage that data under the legal basis of legitimate business interest. But it really is down to each individual organization and what their own compliance strategies mandate and dictate.
Absolutely, and there are some clever ways we can do it. Obviously, in Marketo integrated, if it doesn't have an opt-in on it, if it's not come through a piece of content, for example, but it's someone asking a question, we can run them through a soft opt-in process, for example, and try and build up your opt-ins and your preferences, of course, from there. So,
and that's a great point as well, James. Right, in so much as we talked about the integrations and how quick and easy it is to turn them on. Right, 2 minutes, go boil that kettle. That's getting the data in there, right? The challenge becomes the art of the possible, right? Or the art, right? What do you want to do with that data once you've got it? And that's where the likes of JTF come into it, right? It's like to help organizations think through the strategy around, it's like, I've got this data in there now how do I go about using it from a business perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, a great question kind of roll is, how do I get more leads from LinkedIn? That's a big old question. I think it obviously comes down to some great creative, some interesting content. But I actually would like to focus back to that point of the advocacy piece of getting the message out there, getting it further. I mean, we all follow a number of pages on LinkedIn or follow profiles on Twitter, but actually you're really monitoring every single piece of content. But actually the algorithms these days, of course, are if you're starting to see a flow of content, you're engaging, let's say with Colin's posts on LinkedIn, you'll see more and more of them. There's of course integrations directly into Marketo as well for leads coming in from LinkedIn forms. And again, I think the balance of, is it engagement? Is it a form fill out? Again, that's the strategy piece. And how do we use this data? How do we get it right? So again, thanks for the question.
James, just to add to that as well, one of the questions that I get quite a lot, right, is if we're empowering our employees to take that content and share it out, let's say over LinkedIn, right? It's like, aren't people going to start to see the same content from multiple people? Yeah, given that you know, they're all sharing the same thing off of the advocacy board. Statistically, yeah, the overlap of most people in the organization is about about 8%, which is very small, right? The other thing we have to remember about social is not everyone views everything that goes onto their social feed on a daily basis, right? Because I don't know if you're like me, I may drop into LinkedIn like you know, a few times a day, or look at Twitter a few times a day, but I don't go back. Yeah, it's like over, you know, the last couple of hours. Maybe I'll scroll back over the last 10 or 20 posts, depending upon how much time Lisa, my wife, gives me to look at it. Right. So if you think about it, where it drops on the timeline, not everyone's posting it at 10 o'clock in the morning, right? It's like that's the beauty of it. Right. So you know, if anyone's concerned, I'd actually look to allay those fears and those concerns and say that you know, it statistically it's not there.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I think the other thing, you know, as you rightly say, that content is going to go out in a schedule based on when your advocates are posting it, not necessarily when you think it's going out. And I think maybe it's only the social media managers of the world who are sitting watching every post that goes by, right? That's how they get the amazing results to do. And actually on that point of networks, Colin, there's a question here on what networks does Oktopost support across publishing, and of course we should talk a little bit about advocacy because it is slightly different as well.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think I've said it a couple of times, but just to reinforce it, publishing, yeah, and that could be over the corporate network, or it could be any personal accounts that the marketing team are ghost posting on behalf of. So that would be LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Think of it as the big five, right? Sounds like we're on Safari. Yeah, let's shoot them down. And then on the advocacy side of things, it's slightly different, as you say. So LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, WeChat for our colleagues over in Asia Pacific, and Xing for our colleagues in Germany.
Brilliant. That is pretty extensive. And again, the main platforms, right? I think that's the important part. And, you know, there's one question that comes up, and I guess it's something that's kicking around in my mind. And, you know, we always talk about attribution, we talk about revenue marketing. You know, we've got now these, if we take it into context, and this is us, I guess, theoretically choosing Oktopost as your social media platform here. But if you've got Oktopost, you've got a Marketo, you've got a Salesforce combined together, that's pretty powerful, right? I mean, what are your thoughts, and what do you see from other customers that you're working with?
Yeah, so what do we see from a tech stack perspective, James?
From a you know, the power of this stuff, how do you get to this revenue marketing stage if you've got all this tech together? Well, yeah, how do you string it together?
So it's about bridging the data gap, right? It's like you know, it's how do I bring those data elements together, right? And you know, the first thing is having the data in the first place, and that's what you know, Oktopost supports from a social perspective, right? You know, and whether you put it into, I've just come off a call beforehand where it's like, do we put it into Marketo and then let Marketo sync it to Salesforce? Do we put it into Salesforce, let Salesforce sync it to Marketo? Do we put it into both? The answer is whatever works for you. Right, from an Oktopost perspective, yeah, we actually ourselves we use Marketo and Salesforce in-house, right, and we put it into both environments at the same time. The reason that we do that, yeah, is you know, we're trying to get insights out to our salespeople, right, in as near real time as possible, so that they can take you know, action against it, and that action may be jump into that conversation at that point in time in order to help influence the customer experience and the customer journey, right? Especially if it's a negative reaction to or a negative comment on a social post, right? Or indeed, if that person is engaged in an active sales opportunity, what a great way, right? It's like having well, it is having an interesting moment, but an interesting moment for social. Wow, guess what? Most people didn't know they could do that. Yeah, so it gives you an excuse to pick up the phone and have a conversation. And we all know that people buy from people, and people buy from people that they trust, and people buy from people they like. Yeah, so it's about having that data. James, another question has come in actually, right? It's like around the use of personal emails on social accounts, and how are we able to tie that? I think the question I'm supplementing it with a bit of my own, but how are we able to tie that together, right, in order to get it across into Marketo, given that inside Marketo, we're all looking for business emails rather than Gmail accounts. Yeah, Oktopost will not overwrite any information that you've got inside the Marketo environment already, right? So yes, we will pull together the social profiles in order to build up a picture of an individual, across multiple networks. When we do that match to Marketo, email email isn't like one of the matching criteria, to be honest with you, because you're never going to pull, the social networks don't actually give you the email address of the individual. Right, so it doesn't matter that they've got a personal email account on their social profile, because we're not actually using that from an Oktopost perspective. We are using various cookies, first-party cookies. We have first-party cookies. We also use Marketo Munchkin code, because don't forget, it's like if they're known in your database already, you've got a Munchkin code against them. If they're engaging with social content, like we're taking that tracking code and using that as part of the matching condition: first name, last name, location, company, etc. All of that information you typically do pull from the social networks.
The wonders of AI, right?
The wonders of AI. It's so the match score actually between the matching AI between Oktopost and Marketo, it's a predictive match score. And so the AI engine is looking at it and saying, okay, right, I've got all of this information over here, I've got all of this information over here, these fields match up. It's like that will then spit out and I'm sure there's a much more technical term than spit out, but that will spit out a predictive match score. We then compare that to the threshold that the company is set with inside the Oktopost platform, and if it matches or is greater than that, then that's when the match affects.
Brilliant. And I know we're getting close to 15 minutes over time, but there's just one final question that I think is worth raising. Paid social. Some people are doing it, some people aren't. How does that differ based on what we've just talked about?
Yeah, so give us a little bit of your paid spend, put it into organic, empower your employees, and you'll probably get greater results. Yeah, so we've got a customer that has, and they need to remain nameless, but we've got a customer that did a bit of a study, and they were getting a conversion rate of about 2%, I think it was, on paid. And they were getting a conversion rate of somewhere around 50 to 55% through their advocates. So I think that just talks for itself, James.
Yeah, it definitely does. Well, listen, Colin, thank you very much for taking the time. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We will send out the recording within 24 hours of this conversation, and of course, post it online so that you get access to it. And any further questions you've got, feel free to write to us, and we can then pick it up with you from there. Thank you.
Thanks, James. Thanks for the opportunity.